Welcome to Proof of PR, your passport to the world of public relations for Bitcoin and Web3. I'm your host, Kelley Weaver, CEO of Melrose PR, a leading provider of communications and PR strategy in our unique industry. Get ready for an inside look into the future of finance, technology, and entrepreneurship from those driving innovation in the space. Join us as we learn how they generate headlines, cut through the noise, and grow their brand awareness through media placements, press mentions, and thought leadership. These are the stories behind their success. This is Proof of PR. Hi, everyone. Today I'm joined by Ty Smith, who is the CEO of Coinbound. Welcome, Ty.
Hey, what's up?
So happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you first got into this space.
Yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO of an agency called Coinbound. We're a Web3 agency, similar to yours, Kelley, of course. But yeah, we were one of the earlier agencies to start focusing exclusively on the crypto and Web3 space. It wasn't even called Web3 at the time. But yeah, we've been doing that for about, 5-6 years now. Really fun business to run, really fun industry to be part of, as I'm sure you know, and everyone listening knows. Sometimes better than others, but right now it's a pretty good time. But yeah, no, just happy to chat and just talk about some PR and marketing type stuff. It's awesome that you have a podcast like this.
And you also have a podcast in Web3 marketing. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I do. We focus not necessarily so specifically on like the PR aspect because we're more of like a full service type agency, but just all kinds of stuff, topics like, how to grow crypto companies. Yeah, we've been doing that for, I think 2019 is when we started. I saw your questions beforehand on the prep kind of questions, and it made me kind of go back and do the math on when we started that. It was 2019. So we've been doing that for a while. It's been a lot of fun. Also, I'm sure you see it's cool to just chat with a lot of people that are really knowledgeable about marketing in the crypto space because it's not that big of a cohort. So yeah, it's really it in a nutshell.
Yes, I mean, our paths have continued to collide here over several years. And I think, it's fun to see the agencies that stick around because we've built some resilience through these market twists and turns. So I'd love to sort of, I guess, initially, what drew you to crypto? Were you doing marketing for other industries or, what was your sort of entry point?
Yeah, not as an agency. When Coinbound started, obviously, as the name kind of suggests, it's a entirely crypto focused company. I wasn't on the agency side of anything beforehand. I was in marketing. I always loved marketing, but my career was kind of in a bunch of different places. I went to med school for a little while. I was in Wall Street, just kind of bounced around in interesting things, I guess. But I got into crypto 2016, I think it was. I had a buddy who was really into the Ethereum community. And he kind of just introduced me to that. He was building a dApp, and the mechanism of the dApp wouldn't allow just normal fiat kind of payments. It was a fully digital product and cross-border and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, how are you going to build this? That's not going to work with real money or digital payments. And he introduced me to the concept of decentralized money, decentralized finance, all of that. So from there, it just kind of blew my mind as far as what's possible with all of that. Quickly after that, me and him and another partner started a startup, essentially. It was kind of like Fiverr for crypto. And we had a lot of success with it, but it was really early and not necessarily in the best time to start a crypto company. Had a good amount of success. Eventually, I think they wanted to not do the entrepreneurship as much as I did. So they kind of went their own ways. They were on the kind of development side. I was more on the sales and marketing side. And just kind of in that process of trying to work with agencies and trying to work with the media and all of that, I realized how fragmented and how underdeveloped that whole space kind of was. So when it came time to kind of figure out what my next project was, it was pretty obvious to me. I love marketing. I love crypto. How do we combine the two?
Love that. So you said Fiverr for crypto. So was it Fiverr for developers you can get, or what types of service providers were offering up Fiverr services at that time?
If you remember, because a lot of people that haven't been in the space long enough wouldn't even know the term, but bounty campaigns were huge back then. These kind of micro activations. A lot of it was used for marketing type stuff. So we had a lot of people posting follow me on Twitter and you'll get whatever 0.01 ETH, whatever it is. It was a lot of kind of micro tasks like that. So there was a huge kind of community that built up, especially in Southeast Asia, where the cost of living was lower and they were able to make something a little bit more significant. But we had a lot of crypto companies publishing tasks and stuff like that on the platform where obviously they were paying people in crypto. I think we built integrated wallets at the time. I think it was 64 cryptos that you can transact in. And because of the small like quantity of like some of the payoffs, like sometimes a couple dollars here and there for really small activations, we did all of like the transactions off chain, which was kind of like newish at the time for like a platform. But you can still kind of withdraw. Anyway, that's what we did at the beginning. So you can say it was like a little bit marketing adjacent, but it definitely wasn't like the agency kind of business that it is now.
Tell me more about the agency services that you provide. Like what types of company comes to you, they say we need marketing, we're a Web3 startup. What do you do to help?
Yeah, I mean, the first step is figuring out like where they're at. Okay, we're a full service agency, so we kind of look at things pretty holistically. Oftentimes in the beginning, they need some level of like strategy, which will pair up with a fractional CMO that's like Web3 experienced, obviously. A huge piece of what we do will be influencer marketing and just like kind of paid media opportunities, working with like the media directly through these kind of like paid campaigns. We do a lot of like PR and earned media as well. Obviously, you do that exclusively and have been doing that longer than we have. But that's a big piece. We'll do a whole lot of like social media management, community management and building. So managing people's Telegrams and Discords, making sure those are really on point and representing the brand in a really positive way. SEO, we do pretty fantastic work on. Our team is really solid there. Yeah, that's the bulk of what we do there. Recently, we added a PPC department as well. Google and Twitter and all these places, or I guess X you call it now, have gotten a little bit looser with the restrictions. So because of that, we've been able to like finally successfully get campaigns running, and we're having a lot of success there. So again, we figure out what the client needs, and then there's probably a solution that we have a department for in-house.
Who are some of obviously it varies client to client what their goals are, but what are the sort of audience segments that, oftentimes people come looking to target? Is it developers? Is it consumers? I'm just curious what the sort of audiences look like.
It's always different. I mean, as you know, it's like we'll get layer 1 solutions and they want to target developers to build out an ecosystem, or even like layer 2 kind of places. We'll get like mobile apps that just want to target users, and that's a little bit more of like a Web 2 similar kind of marketing campaign than Web 3. We'll get, companies or like these like more mainstream IP owning companies that come in and they want to add like kind of like a Web 3 component to it, but they don't know how to properly activate that user base. So we'll make sure that like their community is set up and they're speaking the language of the Web 3 audiences. So it varies quite a bit.
And I imagine depending on what the audience is sort of dictates what the strategy is going to look like.
Yeah.
When you said, so I'm curious about this sort of paid media. What do you mean by that? Like, is that, and you'll have to forgive me because we handle only earned media. So that's sort of my sweet spot. So I am just generally curious what that entails.
Yeah. I'm sure you're familiar with, maybe it's just the naming that is different. Paid like sponsored content, just kind of like, either we're doing like maybe a sponsored webinar together or something like that, rather than like the earned route, whereas like, we know that journalists, we think they're going to be interested in this story. Let's get it in front of them. We're not paying them to cover you. That's earned media versus paid media.
Right. Okay. Got it. I suppose we, in a sense, press releases on the wire are paid media.
Yeah, I would call that paid media. But it's also like oftentimes, almost always used with an earned media strategy as well.
What are the types of, obviously crypto is so broad now. And I know you've been around for several years, so I'm sure this has changed over the years. But what sort of segment of the market do you consider your sweet spot, or what do you enjoy working on? What types of like umbrella within crypto? Or is it so broad?
It is pretty broad. I mean, as far as an agency, we'll take on a lot of stuff in the Web3 rather than a specific, like we're only doing DeFi or NFTs or something like that. I tend to just really enjoy like crypto companies that have some kind of like SaaS component to it, meaning like they have like this like scalable, fully digital onboarding process, because it's usually pretty easy to quantify results and just set up like an analytics suite where we can see specifically like we pulled this lever, this happened, and just kind of like really prove our value essentially. And also get real-time feedback. I'm kind of like a data nerd. I'm always looking at our analytics and client analytics. I'd say those are the ones that I enjoy personally the most.
I love that concept of sort of being able to deliberately track the ROI of a campaign. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? How does that work? I mean, I suppose in community growth, you can track the number of like the size of the community and the actual growth. But what about, conversion? What types of things are you tracking?
Yeah, again, product specific. Companies that aren't like a fully Web3 type product will have a little bit easier time doing analytics or attribution than like a Web3 product that's trying to sell something or you're measuring smart contract interactions. Fortunately, in the past year, there are a number of companies that have come out with solutions that do allow you to better tie like web traffic cookies to Web3 activate like whatever events, like buying an NFT, buying a token, interacting with a DeFi smart contract. So those kind of things is like what we would measure for there. That's relatively new in the industry. What we can track a little bit better though are like, website like form submissions, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the fact that you can like visually see like we did this, that directly attributed to this is like just really exciting to see, to have like your hands on that. Versus something like earned media where like it's more of like a brand building play oftentimes. You can't directly attribute these guys covered us and it resulted in this many people signing up. It's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
You can see it as like referral traffic on your analytics, but oftentimes it goes way beyond that.
Sometimes the reporters refuse to backlink, and it's really tricky to be able to specifically measure. I mean, you can see traffic on a specific day based on what coverage landed, but we do have a hard time explaining that to potential clients, certainly who are very analytics driven, because it's it's hard to quantify sort of brand equity and how well known the brand is based on earned media specifically or exclusively. So the paid route and the analytics are really attractive to a lot of potential clients, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the same issues as far as like hard to do attribution for like influencer marketing. It's better than earned because again, earned, you have to hope they have a link. And then even then that's such a small piece of the picture. With influencer marketing, it's kind of the same. Whereas like, maybe you're doing like a YouTube influencer's talking about a product and you put a link in the description, you can attribute it that way pretty easily. But 90% of people aren't going to click on the link. They're going to go into the browser and they're going to type in the product name and it's not going to show any way of attributing it. So the kind of like secondary metric there, obviously, if you can do like a marketing campaign in kind of like a vacuum where you're only doing one group of things at a time, you can say like, all right, we did this and that's what happened. That's how the traffic like went up or whatever. But a kind of secondary way of doing it, which isn't flawless in any way, shape or form, is looking at like branded searches and clicks from like Google Search Console or something like that.
That's cool too. Tell me about the influencers. So it's paid. You have relationships with the influencers and they charge a fee to promote certain Web3 startups. Is that how that works? Or
influencer marketing obviously isn't like a Web3 thing, but it is definitely more popular in the Web3 space by like, I guess, market share of marketing spend for crypto companies. But we have a huge network. I think it's like over 550 influencers at this point. Across like YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, podcasts, things like that will like work with brands that we're working with to kind of just get the word out. So it'll go through like
mention that it's sponsored.
Yeah, they have to.
I figured. Yeah, that's interesting. I get a lot of, normie friends who text me things from TikTok, like, should I buy this?
Yeah, I mean,
like, where are you hearing this stuff?
yeah, that definitely happens. And, I'm sure there's agencies out there that do that and don't require like disclosures and stuff, but that's, we operate in the US where that's a law. But it goes through the paid routes where, obviously we're incentivizing them financially to be part of a campaign. That's how they make money and survive. But also there's an earned piece as well, where it's just the relationships that we have. And oftentimes we'll get, from some kind of like paid campaign, we'll get them kind of educated on a product of a client that we're working with. And they'll just enjoy it so much that they'll take it from there. And like this small paid campaign turned into like a year-long, just totally organic thing.
That's amazing. That's awesome. I mean, that's similar to earned media, where like really we're just the middlemen between reporters and the clients. But the goal is really to establish relationships between those two and step aside so that they have this relationship that bears fruit for many years to come. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
to hear that
it's like an interesting feeling as an agency sometimes, because you facilitate these like relationships and you want to obviously be like in the middle as much as possible in the beginning, but eventually they kind of take a life of their own and you have to be like, all right, I'm no longer like necessary in this kind of relationship, but I'm happy that we're able to add value in that way.
100%. And a lot of the time it's just client education about like how to navigate these types of relationships, what the reporters expect, et cetera. So once we feel confident that our clients sort of get it and are not going to burn the relationship or the bridge, then by all means, like that's our goal, is to really establish trust between the two parties. So that's cool that happens in influencer engagements too, because I would imagine that when there's money being transacted directly, like it's probably a little bit harder for that to happen.
Yeah.
Tell me more about the podcast. What types of guests do you have on?
So it's called the Crypto Marketing Show, and you'll never guess what it's about. But we bring on guests that are typically entrepreneurs or marketers in the crypto space. The whole way we kind of figure out who to bring on. There's two kind of forms of how we do it. I'll do these kind of bite-sized lessons, typically 5 to 10 minutes, just here's how to do PR in the crypto space. Here's how to, build thought leadership in the crypto space, things like that. We'll also bring on a bunch of guests that have contributed in some way or have some level of experience and success in the marketing side of Web3, and just kind of go through their experiences, see what worked for them, see what didn't work for them. The whole goal behind the podcast is how can we provide value to kind of educate the next cohort of marketers in the industry. So that's the kind of stuff we do. We have some pretty fun conversations. We did it for kind of two reasons. Obviously, there's a content piece to it, and content marketing works really well across all industries, including Web3. But it's just kind of fun, honestly, to just chat about this stuff with people. And it gives me kind of a professional excuse to do that.
I love that. That's exactly why I launched the podcast many years ago as well. It was I'm having all these amazing conversations. Why not, press record and then share it more widely?
Yeah. I can't necessarily just call someone up and be let me pick your brain for an hour. But if I say it's a podcast, no problem.
Exactly. No, it gives sort of unparalleled access to people's time and attention, because you're giving something back in return by producing this for them and packaging it and sharing it. So no, it's a fantastic idea. And you've had some awesome guests, many of which have been our clients, and we really appreciate that support. So obviously we pitch you guests. I'm curious how much of your sort of guest selection process is sort of handpicked based on relationships. Do you get a lot of inbound pitches from PR folks? How does that work, and how do you like it to work?
Yeah, most of the people that we'll bring on are through some kind of relationship like you and I have, where it's someone who's working with either an agency or our agency or something like that. We get a lot of pitches, but honestly, I'd say we don't accept a whole lot of them. Just I would if the quality was fantastic. It's just unfortunate that it is people that are just trying to promote something and not really necessarily add value to the audience. So the kind of thought process that we go through, and I'm not necessarily the one who's always making the decisions. There's people that are kind of the gatekeepers, is just think about the audience. Are they people that are going to get value out of this? What is this person's experience? What have they done? Have they been successful? If they haven't been successful in some way, then do we really need their opinion? Which is kind of a rough thing to say, but how we make decisions. It's
just protect your audience.
Yeah. And I mean, we want everything to totally slap when we send it out. That's the thought process.
That sort of reminds me, do you have a client selection process for marketing? And see, in our business, because it's earned media, we have to be extremely selective with who we'll bring on, because it's earned media. So there has to be something there in order for us to be able to be successful and promote something. Furthermore, we want to protect our relationships. I'm curious, in sort of a paid media environment, is it easier to just kind of do the service for whoever, or do you have to be selective as well?
It's a mix. It's definitely easier because we can deliver, even if a client doesn't have the backstory or authority or things like that, we don't necessarily have to rely on that. You need that to get earned media typically. You don't necessarily need that to do a paid media campaign. So we don't have to do that. We do have pretty high standards just because we've spent so much time and effort in building the Coinbound name as something that's reputable, and we don't want to tarnish that by pushing out things that we're not proud to be working with. So it's a matter of substance. It's a matter of if we think these people are actually capable of delivering what they're claiming they can deliver. Things like that. It's a dynamic kind of process. You can't just build a checklist for it.
Yeah. And how is your team set up? Do you have different folks on your teams, responsible for the different types of services, or is it client management and then they handle the umbrella of services, or how does that all work?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in not crossing one department with the other. I think that if you want to get really good people and deliver really good results, you have to have specialists in each department. So that's how we've structured things. Each department has a head, and then obviously there's a hierarchy of senior and junior people. That's essentially how it works. So if you're working with the earned team, you're getting people that only do earned media for Web3 companies. If you're doing paid media, you're getting a different department, and you're getting people that are just highly specialized in that thing. That's one of my worst fears ever, is being this generalist agency that does like a little bit for everyone, but doesn't really do it that well. So we avoid that by making sure that like the division of labor is such that everyone only does that one thing.
Do you have someone who like project manages for the client across the specialties, or is it just they have like, if they pay for this thing, then they have someone who leads that vertical?
No, everyone has an account manager as well. That's kind of like their quarterback behind the campaign, and they'll be responsible for like cross collaborating between like the multiple things. Everything we do campaign wise is like a la carte, so you don't have to like take a full package. You can do just like PR, right. You can do just whatever paid media, influencer marketing, and then you'll have access to those departments working on your account, and then you'll also have kind of like this quarterback that will do all the reporting, day to day stuff like that, scheduling weekly calls, all of that.
Do you find that clients often come to you for one thing, but then expand their scope with time?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Needs change all the time. Like you come in and what makes sense for you in 1 month changes the next month.
Do you have any client success stories that you could share, or like things that you're proud of campaign wise that like the audience might be familiar with that we could go look up, or no?
Yeah, we have a bunch of case studies on the website and like a whole like downloadable deck. Obviously, you have to do that as an agency. But yeah, Gala Games we've been with for a really long period of time. I'm always like weary about like how much you share about an active client. But we do have a case study up there. We've had a lot of success with them over the past year, just with like promoting their various initiatives. They're like kind of a segmented company in that they have like a music department and they have like a film department. So we've been kind of working cross department there and having some good solid success there. Over the past year, we've gotten them, I think, 100 plus pieces of earned media. So that's one thing. On like the paid media side of things, we've had this e-commerce based crypto company. I think we have the case study on the website also. But as far as like just running Google ads and Twitter ads and just paid stuff, we're getting them close to a 30 times ROAS, which is pretty fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah. Nexo we've worked with for a while. We 5x'd their social media engagement on one of their accounts. Just a handful there.
Wow. How is it different? I mean, you mentioned that you sort of came into this just for Web3, but I imagine that communities play a big role in sort of how to market in this industry, because communities are like mission critical here. How does that dictate sort of how you do things?
Yeah, they are mission critical, and it's like different levels of importance depending on it. Like obviously really, really important for NFT based companies. Maybe not so important for like an app that tracks your portfolio value. But we have a whole department that just does community. Like their whole job is just managing Telegram and Discord communities, making sure it's moderated, make sure there's like a cohesive strategy behind it, organizing the events to make sure we're doing like, bi-weekly AMAs or something to show the face of the founders, stuff like that. So it's obviously super important, like for most Web3 companies, definitely not all, but probably most. So that's how we manage that. We just make sure. Yeah.
I feel like there's two components to great community management. One is obviously what you're talking about, like really buttoned up sort of management of the channels, making sure there's great information, moderation, all of that. But then the other part, which is like, I feel like tricky, is the growth aspect. How do you drive growth in those channels? Yeah,
oftentimes they will grow organically if the product is good and it's properly managed. If you can lean into that, that's obviously preferable because you'll save money. You can grow it via like paid means, or like not necessarily paid to media, but paid to like an agency to help you or some kind of marketing person to help you. But yeah, when we need kind of like rocket fuel, we'll go through like some kind of like either paid opportunities or influencer marketing type stuff, or cross collaborations with other communities is a major one, things like that.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, a lot of folks really want that right away for the sort of validation.
Yeah.
How do you see the role of marketing in our industry potentially evolving with this sort of rise of AI?
Like I was saying, content marketing is like pretty effective for most industries, including Web3. AI seems to most immediately be taking an impact on that side of like the world, which is just content production and editing. So I think because of the amount of like tools that are being created for that, I think content marketing in part will be brought in-house by a lot of teams. It'll at least make more financial sense to do it on your own or with like one marketing manager versus like an agency that specializes in that. I think there's always going to be a market for like really good content though.
Of course.
So I think that's going to like change things a little bit. But with that, I also think like if everyone has access to those tools and it's really inexpensive, then it's going to be insanely saturated, which already is happening.
Well, also, I think the quality is just not there yet. I'm
Yeah.
curious, can AI replicate SEO content? Because SEO content is pretty formulaic, I feel like. So
It can, but it's like the thing about SEO is it's extremely competitive, meaning if everyone has like it's not like a open ocean, you know what I mean? It's like only one person's the number one result and one person's number two and stuff like that. So if everyone is easily able to make content like that is designed to rank well, you're going to maybe last for a week and then it's going to go to the next thing, which is the now trend on that thing that you created with AI. And it's just, I don't think that's the long-term like vision that Google has for search results. So I think they're pretty heavy-handed in like putting the kibosh on that stuff. So I'm not necessarily putting too many eggs in the basket of AI produced content for SEO purposes, at least.
yeah, it's interesting. I read recently to someone who had entered the Web3 marketing sector in the past year. And she said, a lot of the pillars that apply to other industries are the same here. It's content marketing, it's thought leadership, it's, producing great events, it's, leveraging communities. Like the playbook looks the same across the industries, but those things matter here as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. All the tenets of like marketing in Web 2, almost all of them apply to Web 3. The issues of where like they haven't applied have been mostly because of like, oh, we can't run Google ads or something because Google's anti-crypto or like stuff like that, which is again loosening up. But right. There's things that exist in Web3 marketing that don't really exist anywhere else. Like no other marketer is going to be thinking about like, how do I create a Discord community unless it's like in esports or something.
Yeah. So content marketing, what sort of pillars are there under that umbrella? You said podcasting.
Yeah. We like examples. Podcast is a good one. Like similarly, YouTube, which is, video form podcast in a sense. SEO type content, blog content, social media content. It's stuff that like most people think to do. They just don't put a name on like this is content marketing. Right. I think they should though, because then they can kind of like learn best practices. But yeah, those are all pretty major ones. There's nothing that like is ebooks are a little bit more, I guess, like niche or unknown, things like that.
Webinars, perhaps?
Yeah.
Does that count?
Yeah, I would count that.
Funny, because a lot of those pillars that you just mentioned, we consider like under the thought leadership umbrella.
But yeah, I'm like everything marketing is not really black. Yeah, exactly.
So I suppose it depends on who you ask or what. Yeah. Because thought leadership, you could argue that being on a podcast is thought leadership, or being quoted in an article is thought leadership, or even being on stage in an event, thought leadership.
Yeah, I would consider thought leadership more of like a strategy or a goal, whereas content marketing is more of like a tactic. So it's not like the same apples to apples. Right. Yeah.
No, 100%. But I'm just saying that there's definitely crossover.
Yeah. Well, you can accomplish thought leadership through like earned media. You can accomplish it via like paid media, which is like you wouldn't think is like thought leadership at all. Like that a PR agency would never say paid media is thought leadership, but you can accomplish thought leadership with a lot of different tools.
Yeah. How important do you think events are in our industry? Like event participation for companies, whether it's, speaking on panels or sponsoring the major industry events?
I think pretty important. It, again, always comes down to like goals. So it doesn't make sense for everyone all the time. Companies that like trust is a really important thing I like events for because they'll actually get face to face with people, which is always like really helpful in the Web3 world because everyone thinks everyone else is like a scammer until proven otherwise. So I think it's helpful for that. Just if you have like a business to business type product, it's especially helpful to do just like networking events. I think it's pretty important.
Do your clients tend to sponsor the major events? Do they host their own side events at these events? What's the strategy, or is it a mix?
It's a mix. We don't touch that stuff so much. We tend to focus mostly on digital. Okay. We'll do things as far as like event wise with like sponsorships where we'll like, manage it for them as part of a broader campaign. We'll also via like the earned media department will set up like introductions in person at events or get speaking, kind of spots. That's most of the extent of what we'll do with events. It is something we're like exploring adding more of though, because it's been really valuable.
Back to the influencers. Do they ever work with like managers? Do you work directly with the influencers, or do you work with like their agents or managers or folks that like manage all of the influencers?
Some of them have managers. Some of them consider us their managers. So it's a little bit dynamic there.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. So they come to you to broker deals with brands?
Making it like it's two totally different skill sets, like making content versus like monetizing content. So a lot of people are fantastic with like, I'm going to make tweet. It's going to, it's going to be a great tweet. It's going to go out, hundreds of people are going to see it. Totally different skill set from like, I'm going to negotiate with this brand. I'm going to work out like a, 6-month contract with them. These are the terms of it. Totally different skill set. So a lot of people, they'll get contacted and say like, hey, someone will say, I want to work with you. Like, what's the pricing, all that stuff. And they're just like, I just want to make content. Talk to Coinbound. They'll manage it.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. What are your thoughts on crypto Twitter or crypto X?
It's always been the number one social media platform, and it still is.
How do you think what about LinkedIn?
Really good for B2B stuff. I love LinkedIn. It's just more my, vibe, I guess. I like talking about entrepreneurship stuff. Both important. It depends what you're trying to accomplish. For like NFT type stuff, though, you're not going to find the audience on LinkedIn that you will on Twitter. I'd say probably the same with like DeFi type stuff. It's who your audience is. If you're more to B2C, I'd go Twitter. If you're more B2B, I'd go LinkedIn.
Yeah.
As far as focus, realistically, you should do everything if you don't have resource limitations.
And what about for individuals, like let's say the CEOs of these companies and the experts on the teams versus the brands themselves on Twitter? What's your sort of thought process on like how active should they be, or does it really not matter? Should it be like authentic to them?
Yeah, one of our most recent podcast episodes was on like the top marketing mistakes we see people make in the Web3 world, and the number one was focusing too much on trying to build like an audience on Twitter for your brand versus your key people. People have always, at least as far as I've been alive, interacted way more intimately with people rather than brands, especially on social media. I think if you're going to focus on one, like who do we, put all this content into, it should be like your CEO or founder or CMO more than the brand. I like to have kind of the brand to act as like a cheerleader to the executives and vice versa. But yeah, if we have to pick, I always say let's make this person a thought leader. Let's get people to interact with this account rather than the brand one.
That's really a great tip, and I totally agree. What else? I'm curious about this episode. What are the other marketing mistakes that you see?
I've got to remember. It was maybe a week or two ago. It was the social media one. I said it was sleeping on SEO because no one thinks to do SEO because everyone in Web3 is pretty like, I need results right now, and SEO is like 6 month, 9 month, 12 month plus. What else was there?
To build that flywheel where it actually works.
Yeah, and again, it's not like for every company, but for the ones where it makes sense that you can onboard, like anything B2B is pretty solid for SEO. Anything like mobile app related, anything SaaS based it's a good fit. I've got to rewatch my own episode. I don't remember now.
Well, we'll link to it because I can't wait to hear that. That's great. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience? I feel like you've provided a lot of great perspective, and I'm excited to continue working together. You've really, the industry's evolved so much, so it's just interesting to see how we've all kind of been resilient and pivoted through these bear markets. But I feel like come out stronger. Is there any like learnings or takeaways that you've kind of learned from the last cycle?
It's just like there's a special kind of person that can keep a business specifically in the Web3 space long term through all the cycles, because especially one like ours, which is marketing in the Web3 world, it's like volatility to the extreme, because you have the volatility of just running a marketing business in general, which tends to be the first thing people cut when the market's bad. And then on top of that, you have Web3, which is like, as volatile as it is. And then you have entrepreneurship, which is like, okay, you don't know how much money you're going to make this year or next year, or next month, or things like that. So I think it takes a very specific type of person to run a business like ours. I love it, but it's definitely not for everyone. I love
it too.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. The negatives to some people are positives to probably people like you and I.
What about, where does the majority of your business come from?
What do you mean?
Is it word of mouth? Do they come because they see you on Twitter? Is it coming from relationships with like VCs?
It's a blend. Yeah, it's a blend. Early on, it was very content focused, but we just recognized how finicky that can be and how an algorithm can change tomorrow when we have no control over it. So to put all of our eggs in that basket is not wise. We made a pretty concerted effort over the past 2-3 years to distribute that to make sure we're getting a healthy bit of business from a bunch of different places. So it's a blend of all the things that you mentioned. It's content, it's social media, it's relationships with partners that are constantly incubating new companies. A lot of word of mouth from people that just have done business with us or had some kind of interaction with us that were happy, stuff like that.
Amazing. Well, Ty, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate your time, and I'm excited for this year ahead. It's already feeling very positive over here, and I hope the same for you.
It is. I haven't slept in a week since the year started because I think 24 is the year of crypto. Love it. Me too. All right. Cheers. Thanks, Ty. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Proof of PR. This episode was brought to you by Melrose PR, the leading provider of communications and PR strategy for Bitcoin and Web3 innovators. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen today. To stay up to date on upcoming guests and news, visit proofofpr.com or follow us on Twitter @proofofpr. Until next time, keep learning, innovating, and hodling.